in your prayers. And we have Sue Brinkman as our very special guest this morning. Sue is our staff researcher and journalist at womenofgrace.com. And I'm sure if you have tuned in before, chances are you have already heard from Sue and from her areas of expertise, including yoga, Reiki, the occult. Learn to discern which one is good, which one is not. And Sue is here this morning to share some more of the news stories that she has posted up on the Breaking News blog on womenofgrace.com. Our call screener, Matt Gabinski, has opened the lines for you, which means you can call in and talk to Sue this morning. And you can also share a comment or ask a question about the news stories that we are going to be sharing with you, or one of Sue Brinkman's areas of expertise like yoga, Reiki, the occult, and discerning which is good, which is not. So this is the hour to call in. The number is 1-800-585-9396 right here on EWTN Radio. That number is 1-800-585-9396. You can also text in your question by sending the letters EWTN to the number 55000 in the form of a text. And then you'll get another text back. All you need to do is follow the instructions, which is basically send a second text. And with your name and question or comment, please keep it real short. And be aware that data charges may apply when you're sending these text messages. You can also join our YouTube webcast of the show and chat with our social media manager, Mr. Jeff Burson, the nice person. And you do that by going to youtube.com. And then you type in the search bar EWTN channel. It'll take us to the EWTN channel page, and you can click on the live events. You'll see Women of Grace Radio going on there live and very much alive. Sue, what a joy to have you this morning. Thank you for stepping in.
Oh, and thanks for having me back.
Oh, sure. Well, there are some news stories that have been on the Breaking News blog that you publish on womenofgrace.com that we want to get to. But I see that you posted some fresh this morning, and I want to go with those first because they are quite revealing. And it's always the good kind of news and information that you post there to keep us informed of what is going on. You have a story here about the churches. Churches are forcing clarification of the bathroom law. What is going on? What's the latest update?
Well, this is really a big victory for churches against these ridiculous bathroom laws. In the state of Massachusetts, they have an anti-discrimination bill that had listed places of worship as being places that had to open up their bathrooms to people to use according to their perceived gender rather than their biological gender. Mm-hmm. And the churches, of course, said, no, this isn't going to happen. And they got together and they filed a lawsuit alleging that the law would force them to let transgenders use the bathroom of their choice while inside their buildings, which goes against their beliefs. And they also assert in that suit that the new law could stop pastors from making statements about sexuality that don't agree with the government's stance. So even though the churches really appeared to be exempt from the law while they were performing these religious functions, that was kind of clear in the law. But the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination explained that a church would only be subject to the law. This is a clarification. I'm sorry about my cat crying in the background. If it holds a secular event, such as a spaghetti supper, that's open to the general public. However, the churches came back and said, no, wait a minute. These spaghetti suppers are also often an outreach of our religious work, which is true. You know, we often will open up our churches and invite people in, and of course, you know, while they're there, of course, we're going to be speaking about Christ and celebrating our faith. So they are religious in nature, and they said, no, this isn't good enough. We don't like this. So they did, of course, hire attorneys. They filed a suit, and Alliance Defending Freedom is a public interest legal firm. They are who defended them, and they said that the state's anti-discrimination law for transgenders would infringe on the church's religious freedoms, and the Attorney General's office came back and said, okay, you're right. We'll remove house of worship from the list of public places to the law. The only time that the churches now will be subject to the law is if it is hosting a strictly public secular function. And even that is going to be only under limited circumstances are they going to do that. So, be forced to do this bathroom law thing. So what's happening is we had a big win. We had a nice big win. And the churches have now withdrawn the suit. Mm-hmm. They say they're happy with what the state has given them, which is essentially an exemption from that law, which is the way it should be.
Right.
It can't be forced. This has got to stop. These anti-discrimination laws that are forcing Christians to violate their faith or be called bigots and haters, and in some cases even thrown in jail, which we've seen happen in this country with some of the marriage license for same-sex marriage couples. So, we've got to get away from this. Everybody's got to be able to live together peacefully and happily, and we can do that without forcing these very oppressive laws. Some of these anti-discrimination laws are really bad, and we need to put an end to this kind of oppression of people, whatever your stripe. We all have to be able to live together in peace. So this was a big win, though, and I was happy to report on this one for once, Elena. We had
have
a
good
win
news
here
to report. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It somehow, and I want to be optimistic about this, it somehow seems that the tides are beginning to turn just a little bit, which means we need to continue praying, just as if there was no good news, because we can't let our guards down.
That's right. That is absolutely right. We can't let our guards down. We have to keep up the prayer, because this is all, this is the year of mercy. Mm-hmm. And we've had a great period of mercy now granted to us by the Lord. We need to make the best of this.
Yes.
And the best thing that we can do is, I always say, pray for the conversion of souls, that we will be able to convert the souls of people who really want to promote immorality and things like that in our society. We need to pray for their conversions. They'll come back to Christ and they'll understand, His teachings and understand them better. Right now, they just think that church is a dinosaur and it doesn't know what it's talking about. It just needs to understand that, boy, if we lived according to the message of Jesus Christ, what a happy, peaceful world this would be if we loved one another as we love ourselves. That really would be the way to live. So we need to get Christ's word out there, and I just say pray, pray, pray that we can continue to use this era of mercy, which we've been granted, for the good.
Amen. That's right. We need to be proactive about it. And one way to be proactive is to stay informed. Here on Women of Grace with our guest today, Sue Brinkman, who is our staff journalist and researcher at womenofgrace.com. We're taking your questions today about the news stories that Sue is sharing or comments that may stem out of these topics. And we are going to keep you informed. We continue with more here. We're also taking your calls live. And the number is 1-800-585-9396. That number again is 1-800-585-9396. You can also join our YouTube chat on youtube.com. Then type in the search bar EWTN channel. And you can type in your question on the YouTube chat or your comment. Our social manager, Jeff Burson, is there ready to take your calls. Our call screener, Matt Kubinski, is ready to take your calls at 1-800-585-9396. In a moment, we'll begin with Jackson, our listener number one caller today in Burlington, Vermont. Judy, and then you. 1-800-585-9396. You're listening to Women of Grace on EWTN Radio.
December 16th. St. Bernard said, "There are three distinct comings of the Lord of which I know: His coming to men, His coming into men, and His coming among men." Let us reflect. How have I experienced all three of these comings of Jesus in my own life? What is my response to God about these visitations?
If you'd like to receive a daily Grace Line by email, go to womenofgrace.com and click on the word Grace Line, and then check the box Receive Grace Lines. That's womenofgrace.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Sometimes we think that if we give alms, it's enough. Or if we happen to visit an elderly person, it's enough. And all these things are very, very, very good. But the Lord wants a converted heart. He don't want your pocketbook. Angelica wants your pocketbook. But God doesn't want your pocketbook. He wants your heart. He wants your mind. He wants you to be filled with Him. He doesn't want all these kind of sacrifices that you just kind of drop in front of Him and then go your way living a sinful life. But once we're repentant, see, God forgives and forgets.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Hello, this is Janet Benkovic, host of Women of Grace Live. The radiance of the Bethlehem star led the Magi to Jesus Christ, and they were forever changed because of it. As we journey through Advent to the creche of the Christ child on Christmas morning, let us consider the stars in our lives, those men, women, and circumstances that have led us into a deepening relationship with Jesus, our King. May God give us the eyes to see them and the grace to embrace them.
The EWTN catalog is now totally digital. At home or on the go, Christmas shopping has never been easier. Plus, you and your friends can shop using your iPad or iPhone or virtually any mobile device. Visit EWTNRC.com today.
This is Debbie Georgiani from Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
This is John Martinoni of Open Line Monday.
This is Marcus Grodi, host of The Journey Home. Advent blessings from all of us at the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
12 minutes past the hour here on EWTN Radio's Women of Grace, and we are delighted to have Sue Brinkman, our staff researcher and journalist at womenofgrace.com, as our guest today, answering your questions about areas of her expertise, such as Reiki, the occult, yoga, but also she is sharing with us the news stories of the week that she posts on her breaking news blog on womenofgrace.com. And you can join in the conversation. Judy has, Mary has, we'll go to them in just a moment. And here's the number for you to join in. 1-800-585-9396. If you have questions or comments about the news stories that Sue Brinkman is sharing with us today on Women of Grace, feel free to give us a call, talk to our friendly call screener, Matt Gabinski. He is on his best behavior today. It is Friday. 1-800-585-9396 is the number. You can also text in your question or comment. Text the letters EWTN to the number 55000. That number again is 55000. Text the letters EWTN and then follow the instructions, and we'll get your text message here and hopefully be able to share it with Sue Brinkman. Sue, we have Judy on the line. She is in Canada listening to EWTN radio through Sirius XM 130. Judy, what is your question for Sue Brinkman? Go right ahead.
Hi, Sue. I would like to know a little bit about hypnotism as far as the dangers of that, and I guess once experienced, whether it be people engaging in that for supposedly quit smoking, or whether it was just an entertainment thing. Once you've opened that door, what then can they do to close it? I know that people talk about, well, see an exorcist. Well, that's just not that easy, right?
Right, exactly. No, hypnotism in general, the church has only issued a warning about it. It is not a condemnation about the use of it. And it just says that it is condemned only abuses, leaving the way free for scientific research. And that's kind of a statement that came from the Holy See in 1840, and it's never really been changed. So, but what it does condemn are abuses, and these are in the area of entertainment. In fact, using hypnosis for entertainment is so dangerous because of the post-hypnotic effects of hypnosis that many countries have banned it. It's illegal to do that. And, not here in the United States, unfortunately. We have that happening. I don't know what it's like. I think you're in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what
in Canada.
I don't know what the laws are there, but I know that it's extremely dangerous because of the post-hypnotic effects. There can be different kinds of psychological issues that will start, that can happen and be triggered by hypnosis. That is why people are strongly advised to go to a licensed hypnotist rather than just a lay hypnotist who has certification. And the states, A lay hypnotist can go and get certified after completing like 200 or some hours of training, but a licensed healthcare professional typically has 7 to 9 years of university coursework plus residency programs. So you're very encouraged to go to a licensed hypnotist, and you're going to find them through your local hospitals. You can go on the American Hypnotherapy Association will also give you the names of licensed therapists that you can go to. Those people you can, for smoking, to lose weight, that's fine. We all know that there's been plenty of science to prove that it does work. If you can get hypnotized, I tried it years ago to quit smoking, and I went 3 times and never was hypnotized. I just couldn't seem to be hypnotized. But yeah, there are problems with it, and you can. It's an altered state. You're putting yourself into an altered state, so you're open to any of the dangers that are inherent in some of these meditation techniques that revolve around putting you into an altered state, such as transcendental meditation, forms of centering prayer, anything that makes you blank your mind and keep repeating a word over and over and over again. That's a form of self-hypnosis, and that's what it does. It puts you in an altered state, in which time, your will is completely gone. Any entity can come in and influence you during that time. So you need to give serious thought before you undergo hypnosis or any kind of practice that puts you in an altered state, because you are opening yourself up to a lot of problems. As far as hypnotism is concerned, there's a long list of post-hypnotic effects that are terrible. Insomnia, psychotic breaks, depression, very serious matters. And you need to avoid that. Avoid any kind of stage hypnosis or any kind of dealing with people who just have a certification and are not licensed medical professionals.
Okay, so Sue, if that's the case, if somebody experienced that, was put in under hypnosis through entertainment, what would you do then to correct? Like you say, there's a very dangerous element there that can...
There is, but it doesn't necessarily have to have happened. It may not have happened. If that person's not really having any kind of after effects, such as, suddenly they can't focus or stuff like that, they get very distracted, they can't think straight, that's one of the after effects of it. If they're having some sort of manifestation, perhaps even in their home, knocking sounds, or they would have to have some sort of a manifestation before they would have to even worry about that, I guess is what I'm saying. Just because you went there and were hypnotized doesn't necessarily mean that anything happened to you. It could have, though. It could have. And if you were to just go to confession and confess that you allowed yourself to be hypnotized by a stage hypnotist, even though the church has condemned those kind of abuses, and report that to the priest, he will forgive you for that sin. And if that person then renounces having done that, which of course they will have done if they go to confession, they should be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. A great question. Bye.
Thank you there, Judy, listening in Canada. Blessings to you and to all of our Canadian listeners. You can use the same number to call in the show as you could use inside the United States. That is 1-800-585-9396 to ask your question or share your comment with Sue Brinkman, our staff researcher and journalist here at Women of Grace on EWTN Radio Live this hour. If you are listening outside the U.S. and Canada, we have a special international line for you. We'll put you up at the top of the line. That's what Mr. Gubinski, our call screener, does. Gives you a little bit of preference. We don't want to run up your phone bill. The international number is country code 1, then 205-271-2985. It's an exclusive international line, country code 1, then 205-271-2985. And Sue, we go to Mary next. She is listening in South Bend, Indiana to EWTN Radio through EWTN.com online. Mary, go right ahead with your question for Sue Brinkman, please.
Hello, Sue. Thanks for taking my call. I was calling in to ask about your thoughts, the church's teaching on essential oils. I hear so many people using them, selling them, what have you, and I was just curious.
Oh, essential oils, there's really nothing wrong with the essential oils themselves. They're merely an extract of a plant. They're referred to as essential only because they're said to carry a distinctive scent or essence of the plant, such as rose, lavender, eucalyptus oil. They are not New Age. and it is okay to use them.
Okay.
The time the problem that we're having with essential oils is that people are using them to cure what they say is to cure serious illnesses, such as flus or whatever, contagious diseases of one sort or another. They're trying to use them for that, even though there's no science behind that. There's nothing's ever been proven on essential oils. And a lot of people like to say, well, but a lot of medicines are made from that, but a lot of medicines have to be synthesized into a fashion into a form that the body can use and assimilate. And that's not what you're buying when you go to Young Living or doTERRA and buy their oils. You're just buying actually just the scent. So that's not a problem. The other issue that's going on out there is these different oils, these blends, such as they're blending different things like, we'll put together orange and clove and cinnamon bark, and if you use this, you're going to experience great abundance. They're called blends. And the problem I have with that, and a lot of people have with that, is that essential oils are very widely used in Wiccan and other forms of witchcraft type practices, and that's how they use them. Mm-hmm. They mix this, and this, and say, okay, this is going to attract all kinds of abundance to yourself, or you're going to get healthy after you do this, or you're going to experience great calm and peace in your family by doing this, and that simply is not true. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is more or less the New Age law of attraction here. If you just create this little frequency by combining all these oils, you're going to attract all these things to yourself. This is totally wrong. It is not how essential oils are to be used. If you want to just inhale some lavender because it smells good and it makes you feel better, or peppermint or something, that's fine. But all this stuff, I've had articles that mothers are giving their children who had laryngitis, and they're claiming that they were cured with the essential oils. There's no scientific proof that they can be used in that, and we're required as Catholics to use ordinary means with anything that's contagious, especially with some of these childhood, little things like colds and that, but this is how they spread when they're not being treated properly. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be using ordinary means, and that's considered to be an act of charity toward our neighbor. And you're not to be using stuff like essential oils. There's absolutely no science behind it. They are looking into it. They're testing them, but there's no science right now that it can cure anything, other than just to make you feel good by, inhaling peppermint or whatever aroma you like the best. But I think what's happening out there in so many circles is they're going overboard with it. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that it does, more than what it really does. So, but that's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Blessings there to South Bend, Indiana. And you can also chime in with your question for Sue Brinkman. The number is 1-800-585-9396. About a couple of lines open right now. If you call right away, you'll be able to get in. 1-800-585-9396 is the number. And Sue Brinkman is our staff researcher and journalist at womenofgrace.com. She's our guest today on Women of Grace. Sue, we go to Tim, who's listening in Grand Rapids, Michigan, through a very lovely name for a radio station. It is Holy Family Radio. Tim, welcome to EWTN Radio's Women of Grace. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, hello. Again, Tim from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm a devout Catholic, practicing Catholic, and I very much enjoy Holy Family Radio and EWTN, listen to it regularly. I did want to comment on Sue's recommendation to ban all forms of self-hypnosis, including centering prayer. This is
some forms of centering prayer.
Some forms of centering prayer?
Right,
okay.
Right, that's what I said.
Okay, well then I just want to encourage listeners to check out contemplativeoutreach.org, and they have a lot of information about a proper and healthy form of centering prayer, a wonderful way to draw close to God. And there's also a Father Thomas Keating, a Catholic monk, who promotes that as well and provides lectures and retreats concerning that. And I just have found it to be a very wonderful practice to augment my prayer life and my daily life, and would like to offer that comment.
Okay, centering prayer does have issues, as does Father Keating. We have my book, Learn to Discern, as a Christian or New Age, has a whole chapter devoted to centering prayer in it, to explain where things can go off on centering prayer. People need to understand where it comes from, and it comes from transcendental meditation, which has been Christianized by Thomas Keating, by his monks, up at St. Joseph's Abbey. And the blanking, any kind of prayer that asks you to blank your mind, and then sit in that mental state with the blank mind for an extended period of time, and then it calls that prayer, that, according to the Catechism, is an erroneous notion of prayer. You don't spend 20 minutes every morning and 20 minutes every day blanking your mind and calling that prayer. That is not Christian prayer. And that comes from Cardinal Ratzinger in some aspects of Christian meditation, where he speaks against that and these practices of just sitting there in an empty void, because it is not Christian prayer. What we want to do with Christian prayer is to communicate with God, to dialogue with God. There has to be a back and forth. And if you're just sitting there blanking your mind and casting away, even though it's gentle and peaceful, you're casting away all feelings and any kind of inspirations that might come to you. You're casting everything away. You could be casting away things that the Holy Spirit might be sending to you. And I know that as a Carmelite, as we go through the different stages of prayer, if you're sitting there in an empty void, you could really be holding yourself back from achieving much higher forms of contemplative prayer than I know is being offered at Contemplative Outreach. I'm very, very familiar with that organization. I have read I have a lot of their stuff here and I use this in my research. However, if a person is using those centering prayer techniques and what I'm calling about banishing things from your mind, if you just say, you're sitting down to prayer and you just decide, well, I just want to shut out the day, I don't want to think of anything, so I'm just going to say the name of Jesus for a few minutes here and just get myself quieted down. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you do in the course of your 20 minutes of prayer, then you can be running into some problems. Then it's no longer Christian prayer. That's really the difference, and that's why I said some forms of centering prayer, because centering prayer is taught different ways in different places, and it just depends on what you're following. So if you're just sitting there with an empty mind for 20 minutes twice a day, that's an issue. But if you're just using it to quiet down and then get into prayer from there, there's absolutely no problem with it. So I hope that helps to clarify a few things. I don't want to have the wrong message getting out there, but there are definitely issues with centering prayer, with Thomas Keating, with the origin of it. It's very controversial. And anyone who is involved in it, it would be wise to educate yourself on it, but don't go to websites that are proponents. I've learned this in my research of the New Age. That's the last place you go. If you really want to get objective information, you got to look at the critical sites as well. You got to go to both if you want to get the whole story. So, okay?
Thank you very much, Tim. We are going to continue to speak to Sue Brinkman here on Women of Grace, coming to you live on EWTN Radio. You can call in with your question or comment, 1-800-585-9396. We are talking about the news stories of the week and also asking Sue questions about her areas of expertise, which include the occult, Reiki, yoga, and centering prayer. 1-800-585-9396 is the number. You can also text in your question by texting the letters EWTN to the number 55000. That again is texting the letters EWTN to 55000, and then you'll get another text back with instructions. Please follow them and be aware that you may get some charges for data that may apply. Stay tuned to more.
The Christian life on earth is a warfare, and as baptized Christians, we are called to be soldiers of Christ, a warrior in the kingdom family of God, a knight at the table of the King. I'm Thomas K. Sullivan, author of the book Called to Knighthood, the Sacrament of Confirmation in the Kingdom Family of God. In this book, I present a biblical and historical overview of the Church as the kingdom of God on earth, the structure of this kingdom, and how it is that the Sacrament of Confirmation strengthens us to engage the world, the flesh, and the devil on the battlefield of life. Check out the Call to Knighthood DVD as well and begin to understand the obligation we share as knights, warriors, and soldiers in the kingdom family of God. Give us a call today at 1-800-558-5452 or go to our website, lhla.org.
60 on 10 with Monsignor Charles Pope.
The sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. This commandment is wide-ranging in its implications. It forbids us not only from committing the very act of adultery, but also other sexual sins such as fornication or premarital sex, watching pornography, and speaking lewdly. Likewise, homosexual acts and acts of masturbation are also forbidden us. And the Lord himself even enjoins us to a purity of mind that we should not freely entertain lustful thoughts. And so it's wide-ranging, it's challenging, but it's in service of the great sacredness of human life which comes from sexual activity. So we thank God for this great gift of sexuality, and we ask for his grace to live it with great reverence. The sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
32 minutes past the hour here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Elena Rodriguez sitting in for Johnette Benkovic here. She is ill with the flu and trying to get better, taking real good care of herself. But you know what? It takes a while to recover from the flu. So she's asking for your prayers. I know that you are praying for her. And she is also praying for you if you're listening anywhere around the world. Johnette Benkovic prays for you every day. She tucks you into her rosary, as she often tells us during the live show. Today our guest is Sue Brinkman, our staff researcher and journalist at womenofgrace.com. And we are taking your live questions for Sue on the topics of Reiki, the occult, yoga, centering prayer as well, and also the news stories that she will continue to share with us here. She posts her breaking news blog on womenofgrace.com. It's a good resource to be checking often. She updates that resource every day, and it keeps you informed. It's a good thing, and that's what we want here on Women of Grace for all you men of grace and women of grace alike. We have Celine on the line, Sue. She is in Delaware listening to EWTN radio through Sirius XM 130. Celine, your question for Sue Brinkman, please. Go right ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I was very concerned when you were talking about centering prayer, because I just went to a workshop at our parish. One of the parishioners led it, but I'm pretty sure the tapes that she used were that priest, Keating, Father Keating. And, we were to choose a word that if we wandered, we could just say that word like Jesus, 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 and so on. Mm-hmm. And it's very concerning to me because I thought it would be I was secular Franciscan, and I was supposed to say our daily hours every day. And that helped me to get to a state where I could pay attention to what I was actually reading or listening to. And I know there was a question when she first proposed this, but it was finally approved by our pastor, and it just really concerns me that, I went 4 or 5 weeks of this and it's wrong.
No, what I said is that there's certain forms of it, and the thing that I'm hearing of what you're saying is that you use it to then enter into the prayer that you want to stay in, right?
Yeah.
You want to be more attentive to what are you required to say the Liturgy of the Hours? Is that what it is? I'm a third order Carmelite, and that's helping you to be able to pray. That's fine, Celine, if you do it that way. But if you just sit in an empty void for half an hour and keep using that word and keep blocking your thoughts, then there's problems.
Yeah.
Then there's problems. And yes, it is being taught in a lot of parishes. There's a lot of things being taught. There's Reiki being taught in a lot of parishes too.
Really?
But, sure. I mean, there's just this stuff is just going on. It's just out there right now, and a lot of it is because most people are not very well educated on what these things are.
Because a few years ago, our spiritual director, a lay woman, had us go through a 30-week Ignatian retreat, which was wonderful, but I had a hard time calming myself down to do the meditations that I was supposed to do with the Ignatian retreat. And, I'm old, but my mind keeps going.
Yeah, see, I'm a writer, and then I can't quiet my mind sometimes. I get so upset, and I'll just sit there and try to imagine a color. I'll just focus on, like, the color green or something, just to get my mind to shut up for a few minutes so I can pray to the Lord. But anyway, you can do it. You can use it for that means, but it can't be your sole form of prayer, I guess is what I'm saying. If you're just sitting there, all you're doing is transcendental meditation with a Christian mantra. Yeah. That's what you're doing. You're just substituting a Christian mantra for a Hindu mantra. But it's the same thing as TM. That's exactly what TM does, is you blank your mind. And we don't want to get into that. We don't need that. Who wants to blank your mind when you can be talking to somebody who can really help you out and do something for your problems? You know what I mean?
Amen.
Why sit there with an empty head, right?
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure thing, Celine. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine, with that question. And Sue, what I can see from what you have explained to Tim and to Celine, both great questions, is it seems to be like that code word, blank your mind, should be raising flags whenever we hear it. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, anything that makes you blank your mind. That's putting yourself into an altered state. That's how you do it. And, in fact, it is a form of self-hypnosis. That is a form of self-hypnosis, to sit there and repeat a mantra over and over and over again and blank all your thoughts, and especially blanking all your feelings and all your inspirations. That's what upsets me as a Carmelite, because I think, oh, my heavens, God's trying to talk with us, and He's trying to move us into higher forms of prayer, but one of the ways He does it is by inspiring us in certain ways and by sending us certain thoughts and inclinations. And if we're just sitting there, blanking our minds, we're pushing Him away. And we have to learn, and this is what Teresa of Avila teaches, progressively in your prayer life, to give up control and to give more of that control over to the Lord. Right. And let Him take over that prayer life more. And while you're sitting there trying to make things happen or not happen, you're still in control, right?
I see. That's very interesting. It's very good to know the background, the reasoning behind this. So we have Christine calling from, guess where?
Wow.
Johannesburg, South Africa. She's listening to EWTN Radio through Radio Veritas. Christine, you are our first international listener of the day. Welcome, my dear.
Okay, thank you. I thought the Canadian was, but please, will you explain what is wrong with yoga and perhaps various extremes? I think some people do it as exercise, and maybe there's value in certain positions or certain breathing. Must one avoid yoga entirely, if you can, and also perhaps just a bit of background of what is wrong with it?
I'd love to tell you about that, Christine. And I have always loved Johannesburg because I worked with someone once who was from there. And she would tell us stories about how gentle and kind the lions were. And how she would get so upset when people shoot lions. And she would say, oh, if you knew how gentle they were. And she would tell us these stories about the animals, about having rhinos in her backyard. And I would just be like, wow, we loved it. We could sit and listen to her for hours. And I've always loved Johannesburg. Ever since then, I hear that word and I smile.
Okay. Although there aren't rhinos in my backyard, but in the game reserve, yeah.
Well, she had them, and she would tell us stories. It was wonderful. But about yoga.
Okay.
First of all, yoga is not exercise. It never was designed to be exercise. It is a Hindu spiritual practice. It was devised for never, ever for athletic limbering, but to bring a practitioner to enlightenment and awareness of his or her inner divinity. So anyone who would say to you, well, I'm just doing the exercises, that would not be accurate, because yoga is not an exercise. It would be more accurate to say, I am using a Hindu spiritual practice as an exercise program. That's more accurate, because it's not. But the other problem with yoga is that because it is a spiritual practice, many of those positions are positions of worship to a number of gods of the Hindu pantheon. So your sun salutation is actually, you're worshiping the Hindu sun god, or the cobra, you're worshiping Kundalini. the fish asana, you're worshiping Vishnu. That's what they are. And people will say, but I'm not doing that. I'm not really worshiping these other gods. I just think it's exercise, and that's how I'm using it. And you do have to have intention in order to be sinning. And that, of course, would be a sin against the first commandment, of course, to be bowing and worship to the sun god. But if you don't have the intention, it would not be. However, that's not the only problem that you have with it, with posing your body in those positions, because, first of all, the person next to you could be worshiping the sun god and could be calling down, of course, what we know to be demons. And the demons hide behind those names. That's what our church teaches. The demons hide behind the names of these false gods. That could be happening. You could also be committing a sin in another way by creating scandal, because so many people associate yoga with Hinduism. How do you know that someone doesn't hear you say, well, I practice yoga, and they might think to themselves, well, she does it, and she's a good Catholic, so, maybe I can get involved in this Hindu meditation, and that would be okay, too. So that's the sin of scandal. You really risk that as well. And stay away from Christian yoga, too, because I say that's even worse. Christian yoga, then, they violate Deuteronomy 12:31. The Lord specifically says, do not worship me the way the pagans do. And now they are taking and making that into worship.
Just repeat that scripture, do not worship me the way the pagans do?
Deuteronomy 12:31.
Okay, cool.
And so avoid that as well. My advice to people, having been a fitness instructor, is you don't need yoga for anything. There is something else that you can do, any kind of isometric exercises you can do that are just as good, if not better, than yoga. Weightlifting has always been the gold standard, and it still is to this day. Nothing has yet to replace it as far as overall health and fitness is concerned. So you don't need yoga, and why risk it? Why risk it?
Right.
You might as well just don't do it.
You say it was developed as a spiritual practice. Is it ancient?
Oh, it's very old. Yeah, the practice of yoga is quite old. Although there's a whole bunch of controversy about that, too, because they can't really date Hinduism. And a lot of people like to say, well, yoga was around before Hinduism. Well, they don't really know that. Serious scholarship really doesn't have an answer to that question, not yet anyway. So yoga all around, to me, is just not worth the risk. And I guess it's saying as an instructor, I know that you're not. There's nothing magical or special about yoga exercises that you can't get somewhere else.
Okay.
I hope that helps you.
That's very clear cut. Okay.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, listening there in Johannesburg, South Africa. Bye-bye. God bless you. And you're right. You are the second international caller on our show today. Judy opened the show calling in from Canada. Now you're calling from Johannesburg, South Africa. And Michelle is calling from a less of an international place, Grand Rapids, Michigan, from a beautiful name for a radio station, Holy Family Radio. Michelle, what's your question for Sue Brinkman?
My question is, I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety about 4 years ago, and the therapist I was seeing has taught me EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization.
Right.
And I was wondering what Sue thought in comparison. I didn't ever feel like I was being hypnotized, but she brought me to a level that I could experience calmness in certain situations.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with EMDR therapy, actually. It's a relatively new form of psychotherapy. The only controversy really surrounding it is the fact that they still haven't determined how exactly it works. So that would be really the only question surrounding EMDR is how does it work? And it was discovered by a psychology graduate named Francine Shapiro in 1987. She noticed that whenever upsetting thoughts would come into her mind, they would fade when she moved her eyes rapidly from side to side. So she began to study this effect scientifically, and within a couple of years, she published a controlled study which described, really a lot of dramatic single-session cures for 22 patients with PTSD. And she was able to then duplicate those results in a 3-year follow-up, and that led to now a lot more a lot more studies that are being done about EMDR, but it is relatively new. They still are coming out with a whole lot of science behind this, and they're trying to figure out exactly how it works, but there is no danger in it. It is not associated with the New Age or the occult. So I would say you would be safe to use it, and especially if it's bringing you relief, then thank God for that.
Deep in my prayer life, I realized.
Wow.
In the long run, it just helps me, I can deal. I didn't want to deal with my anxiety, which is probably minor, or my PTSD, with medication. I wanted to get to the core root of the problem and work with that from there, and she helped me get there with this EMDR. It took quite a long time, but even now when I find situations where I feel unsafe, I will use that method, and it will center me, and it will help bring me back to, I think, what God initially called me to be as a person.
That's really beautiful. That's really great. Yeah, that's super.
So I just didn't know where she felt and her thoughts were as regarding, like, when she was speaking with another listener about hypnotism. I thought, gee, I never felt like I was being hypnotized in any of those sessions that she worked with me on as far as EMDR. It was light and sound, but I didn't ever feel like I was hypnotized in any of those. But she had me talk about the traumatic situation and then had me find 3 things that made me feel safe at that time, at that therapy session. And then she had me journaling and doing artwork at the same time. And it's still works well for me. So I just wondered what your thoughts were as far as that compared to hypnotism, so I feel more comfortable about that. I did talk to
it's not
parish priest about it, and he thought that it was okay, but he couldn't answer the question about being compared to hypnotism.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that really is saying that it's hypnotic in its method. I think that it's really more of a mental connection there that they're talking about, with the eyes moving back and forth, and that somehow calms things. But she's not really calling that hypnotist. However, as I said, there's a whole lot of studies still going on with this to try to figure out why exactly it works and how is it working. So we might find out, more in the future about it. But as of right now, they're not seeing really any connection to that. And when I did research on it, I don't recall hearing anything that was comparing that to hypnosis. But I mean, you having been through it, you would have experienced perhaps the calmness and that, and maybe thought that was more of a hypnotic effect. But I'm not seeing any connection with the two, and it is considered to be safe. It is a safe form of psychotherapy, but as I said, very new and still being studied quite extensively.
Thank you, Michelle, listening there in Grand Rapids, Michigan, through Holy Family Radio, our second caller from Holy Family Radio. You can text in your question, EWTN, the letters EWTN to the number 55000, and then follow the instructions. You're getting another text back, and please follow the instructions. Be aware that data charges may apply when you send these texts. Sue, we have a texter whose name we don't know, but this person is asking if you can explain if you have an issue with craniosacral therapy.
Craniosacral therapy is bogus. It is also quite dangerous. It should not be used but for anything at all, ever. Just stay away from craniosacral therapy. I'll just tell you quickly what it is for those who've never heard of it. It's based on the notion that living tissues are imbued with an energy that produces impulses which can be palpated by trained hands. And it was discovered by an osteopath about 100 years ago.
Okay.
And he believed that cranial sutures, which are the place where the skull bones meet, that they were designed to allow small degrees of motion caused by the body's life force, which he refers to as a breath of life. And essentially he says that restrictions in these cranial sutures can interfere with the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, which is a fluid that surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. And that would be what results in diseases. And what they do is they believe they can massage those bones, as well as the spine and the pelvis, and increase the flow of the cerebrospinal fluid. However, that is completely bogus. There is no scientific support for craniosacral therapy due to the fact that the underlying premise that the cranial sutures move is false. the bones of the skull fuse by the end of adolescence.
Oh.
And research has never demonstrated that these bones can be moved by manual manipulation. So it's the whole thing is just not well proven. On our website, on our New Age blog, I do have an article, a quite thorough article on craniosacral therapy that also lists some of the deaths that have been associated with that. It is not to be used for any kind of treatment at all, and I would stay away from it because it's actually dangerous.
Thank you, Sue, for clarifying that. You know, Sue uses some very big words, technical words, that may or may not be familiar to you, but one way to make good use of that is to listen to the show again. One of the ways that you can do that is through our podcast page, EWTN Podcasts Audio, on the internet for you, available 24/7. It's an easy way to automatically receive your favorite EWTN programs when you sign up for your programs on your mobile device. All you have to do is visit EWTN.com/podcast to start podcasting today. And you can also send the link to a friend and say, hey, I heard something that reminded me of you, and here is a show where it was mentioned. It's on EWTN.com/podcast. So we go to Paula in Georgia, who is listening precisely to EWTN Radio on the EWTN app, another one of the good services, and it's a free download. Paula, what is your question for Sue Brinkman? Go right ahead.
Hi. I was wondering about emotional freedom technique. They talk about meridian tapping, and I'm not sure it's legit to use for us Christians.
Yeah, you should stay away from that. Emotional freedom technique combines actually two New Age techniques. It's very steeped in the New Age. Mind, body medicine, and acupuncture, those two, they combine those two. And what it is the practitioner taps on certain meridian points in the body, which are acupuncture points, by tapping on them with the fingertips. And he claims that this frequently reduces the therapeutic process from that emotional stress can be alleviated by this tapping. The problem is that, again, the underlying premise, tapping on certain meridian points are associated with this life force energy that are supposedly traveled through pathways through the body. That's what the Chinese believe. And that's where the acupuncture points are associated with this meridian points. But there is no life force energy. There's no such thing as that. That's never been scientifically proven. So the meridian points are sort of moot. They don't really do anything. So emotional freedom technique is based on that and other things, and it's really has no science at all behind it, and it should be avoided. And anybody who's practicing it, you might want to consider going to a different practitioner who will be willing to use things that are based in science.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Paula, with that question. And we have just about a minute left, Sue, but if you can quickly address Cleveland's question. She says she tries to avoid yoga, but she needs to stretch. What can she do?
Oh, you don't need to. I stretch every day, and I never use yoga. There are plenty of yogas. Just, type in calisthenic-type stretches in your Google, and you'll come up with a ton of stretches. You do not need yoga to stretch. That's just absolutely false. And I know that, as I said, having been a practitioner for so many years in the fitness world, you do not need yoga to stretch.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. Sue Brinkman, thank you again for being on the show here with us.
Thanks for having me.
God bless you and everything that you do. Straight up ahead, Take Two with Debbie and Jerry. They will be talking about posing a very interesting question. They have a chapel here. Stay tuned. That's coming up right here on EWTN Radio on Take Two with Debbie and Jerry. This is Elena Rodriguez waving you goodbye, thanking Jeff Burson and Michael McCall and Matt Kubinski. Stay tuned for more of EWTN Radio.